I'll never forget the first time something didn't feel right. My name's Nathan, and I'm 34. I've always been good at reading people. It's a skill I honed growing up, picking up on the little things people didn't think anyone noticed. So, when I started noticing small changes in Sarah, my girlfriend of 3 years, it made my stomach twist. At first, it was the little stuff, things that didn't seem all that important, but still stuck with me. She had always been a creature of habit. Every morning, she'd make coffee in the kitchen while scrolling through her phone, her favorite playlist playing softly in the background. But one week, I noticed she started getting up earlier than usual. I'd roll over in bed and find her already gone, the coffee pot still clean and the kitchen silent. I tried to shake it off. Maybe she just needed more time in the morning. People change their routines, right? But then there was the way she started dressing. Not that she ever dressed badly, but recently her clothes seemed a little more put together. She used to wear those old faded jeans she'd had for years, but now she was sporting these sleek, form-fitting outfits, even when we were just lounging at home. And it wasn't like she was trying to impress me. It was more like she was trying to impress someone else. I tried to ignore the thoughts swirling in my mind. Maybe I was just being paranoid. People change, right? Maybe she was just going through a phase, or maybe she was just more confident about herself. But then it happened. One evening, she walked in the door, and I caught a whiff of something I didn't recognize. Lavender. It was subtle at first, just a soft scent in the air when she hugged me. I shrugged it off, told myself it was some new lotion or perfume she had picked up. But the scent didn't fade. It clung to her skin, lingered in our bed, on the pillow beside me when she got up early the next morning. Lavender. I kept thinking about it. I hadn't smelled it on her before, not once in the 3 years we had been together. The familiar, comforting scent of vanilla and cocoa that used to linger when she was near was replaced by something else. And that's when it hit me. Something was off. I tried to dismiss it, convincing myself it was just paranoia, but deep down, I knew I had to find out. I wasn't sure what it was yet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more beneath the surface. It wasn't just the lavender, it was the small inconsistencies, the way she'd become more distant lately, the odd, hurried conversations when I'd ask about her day, the subtle way she'd avoid eye contact when I asked if everything was okay. She'd brush it off, give me a half smile, tell me everything was fine, but I could tell she was lying. I didn't want to confront her, not yet. Maybe I was wrong, maybe I was reading too much into it, but the scent of lavender, the one that didn't belong, stuck with me, and so I made a decision. I would pay attention. I would watch her, listen closely to her words, her actions, and track every little inconsistency. I had to know the truth. There was more to this story. I just had to find out what. To me, it was the beginning of something I could no longer ignore. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces started to fall into place. I couldn't just keep brushing off the signs. Too many things were changing too quickly. I had to face it. Something was off. It started with her phone. She was always glued to it, but it wasn't like it used to be. In the past, Sarah would leave her phone out, on the counter, casually checking it while we ate or watched a movie. But now it was like her phone was a lifeline. She'd take it everywhere, into the bathroom, when she went out to the grocery store, even when we were just sitting on the couch. Always a few quick glances, a soft smile, or the occasional laugh. At first, I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just a new social media obsession. But when I asked her who she was talking to, she'd become defensive. "I'm just catching up with an old friend," she'd say, her tone clipped, too quick for comfort. That was the first time I noticed the change in her. She'd always been open with me, never guarded about who she was talking to. But now, it felt like a wall was going up between us, and I hated how that felt. Her appearance was another thing. She'd always been pretty, no doubt about that. But recently, it was like she was trying harder, dressing more fashionable, doing her makeup more meticulously. It wasn't that I didn't like the way she looked. It was the fact that it seemed forced. Her new attention to detail felt like something more, something calculated. I never minded the way she dressed before. It was her, comfortable, low maintenance. But now, she was pulling out all the stops, even when we had no plans to go anywhere. I decided to confront her. I couldn't ignore it anymore. So one night, as we sat on the couch, I casually asked, "Hey Sarah, is everything okay? You've been acting a little off lately." She immediately stiffened, her eyes flicking away from me. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tight. I leaned in, trying to keep my tone light, but the weight of my suspicion was already pulling at my words. Well, you've been spending a lot of time on your phone, and you've been dressing up more. I don't know. It feels like there's something you're not telling me. Her face faltered for a moment before she plastered on a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm just busy, Nathan. I'm allowed to have my own things, you know? I nodded slowly, feeling a cold knot settle in my stomach. Of course, I said, but my voice came out flat, like I didn't believe myself. I just don't want to feel like we're drifting apart. She scoffed, her smile never quite disappearing. We're fine, she said, dismissing me. You're just being paranoid. But even though she said it so casually, I could hear the nervousness underneath her words, the defensiveness that dripped from her every syllable. It made the doubt in my mind grow deeper, spread faster, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept going over everything in my head, the way she'd been acting, the phone, her new appearance, the defensiveness when I asked simple questions. And then there was the lavender. I kept circling back to that scent, the one I couldn't place. I needed to know. I needed to prove that I wasn't just being paranoid. Over the next few days, I started tracking her behavior like a detective. I paid attention to the time she spent on her phone. I noticed how she'd go out more often, sometimes without telling me where she was going. When I'd ask, she'd tell me she was running errands or seeing a friend, but there was always an air of uncertainty about her answers. One day, I decided to test her. I asked a casual question, just to see how she'd react. Hey, what's on your phone? I haven't seen you laugh like that in a while. Her eyes flashed with something, fear, maybe, or guilt. It's just a friend, she said quickly, too quickly. You know, someone from work. I could feel the tension in my chest, the way it tightened, the way my heart raced. This wasn't how we used to talk. There was always a sense of openness between us. But now, she was keeping things from me, and it was clear in the way she spoke, the way her eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. I was starting to wonder. Was I just projecting my insecurities? Was I overthinking it all? I tried to push the doubt out of my mind, tried to convince myself I was being irrational. But the more I watched, the more I realized something wasn't adding up. I couldn't let it go anymore. Something was wrong, and I was going to find out what it was. This wasn't just about a phone or a new outfit anymore. It was about trust. It was about the feeling that had settled deep in my chest, the nagging sensation that something wasn't right. And I couldn't let it go. Not until I knew the truth. It had been a week since my conversation with Sarah, and I couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. I wanted to tell myself that I was overthinking, that I was just paranoid. But the signs kept piling up, each one making the pit in my stomach grow deeper. It wasn't just the phone or the lavender-scented skin anymore. It was the lies, the small inconsistencies, the things she would say that didn't quite add up. A few days ago, she told me she was meeting a friend for drinks, but when I asked who it was, her response felt rehearsed. Just someone from work, she said, her eyes flicking away from mine. We're catching up. I couldn't help but notice the way her voice wavered, a slight quiver, like she wasn't sure if I'd buy it. I let it slide. After all, I didn't want to become that person, the one who interrogated every little thing, who assumed the worst. But I couldn't stop myself. I had to know. It was like a force was pulling at me, urging me to dig deeper. A couple of nights later, when I got home from work, I asked casually, "How was your day? What did you and your friend talk about?" She didn't answer right away. She was standing at the counter, fiddling with her phone. Oh, the usual stuff. You know, work, life. I waited for more, but nothing came. She was shutting down, closing herself off from me. She wasn't being the person I knew. My stomach churned, but I kept my voice steady. What's going on, Sarah? Her eyes flicked to mine, and I saw the defensive wall she'd built. Nothing. Really nothing. I'm just tired, okay? I wanted to argue, to press her for the truth, but I saw the way her shoulders tensed, the way she took a step back, almost as if she was afraid I might get too close. It was a shift I hadn't seen before. She'd always been open with me, but now she was retreating into herself, and it was tearing me apart. I watched her walk away from the conversation, her back to me as she poured herself a glass of wine. I was left standing there, the silence between us deafening. Was I really just imagining this? Was I projecting my insecurities onto her? But deep down, I knew it wasn't paranoia. This was real. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to do something, take some action. My thoughts were racing. I had to know for sure. It was one thing to feel something was off. It was another to have concrete proof. I thought about what my next move should be. I wasn't ready to confront her again, not until I had more to go on, but I needed answers, and if she wasn't going to give them to me, I was going to find them myself. So, I decided to test her. I didn't want to confront her directly yet, but I could throw out a few subtle questions, see how she reacted. One afternoon I asked, "Hey, are you seeing your friend again tonight?" I tried to make it sound casual, like I didn't care one way or the other. She hesitated, a flicker of something crossing her face. It was barely noticeable, but I caught it. No plans tonight, just gonna stay in. It was the first time in days I'd seen her relax a little, but even in that moment, something felt wrong. She wasn't being her usual self. She wasn't acting normal. She was too guarded, too defensive. She was hiding something, and it gnawed at me, like an itch I couldn't reach. That night, after she fell asleep, I stayed up late. I couldn't help myself. I went through her phone. I wasn't proud of it, but I had to know. I scrolled through her messages, looking for any sign that would confirm my suspicions. And there it was, her conversation with someone named Ben, someone I didn't know. They had been texting back and forth, mostly innocuous things at first, but then a message caught my eye. "I miss you. It's been way too long since I saw you. Let's get together soon." The message sent a cold shiver down my spine. My heart pounded as I read it again. Ben. Who was he? Why hadn't she mentioned him to me? I felt sick to my stomach. This wasn't just paranoia anymore. This was proof. Proof that something was going on behind my back. I put the phone down, my mind racing. I couldn't sleep. I felt detached, like I was floating outside myself, watching as my whole world started to crumble. My thoughts turned dark. How had it come to this? Was I really responsible for the distance between us? Had I pushed her away? Or was this just who she was now? Someone who didn't care anymore. But more than anything, I felt betrayed. I had done everything for her, been there for her in every way I could. And now this. This secret life she was living behind my back. I had to confront her. I knew that. But I also knew I wasn't ready. Not yet. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, trying to focus. Tomorrow, I would act. Tomorrow, I would find the truth. No more guessing, no more second guessing. I would confront her with everything I knew, everything I had. It was time. And the moment I decided that, a cold, steely resolve set in. The uncertainty, the doubt, was gone. I knew what I had to do, but for now, I would wait. And prepare. It was time to get the truth, no more guessing. The uncertainty gnawed at me, and I knew I couldn't take another sleepless night wondering what Sarah was really up to. The doubt had consumed me for days, and now it was clear. I had to act. I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Tom, an old friend from college who worked in security. We'd lost touch after I graduated, but I remembered he specialized in covert surveillance. I hesitated at first, unsure if I was crossing a line. But the anxiety weighed too heavily, and I had to know. If there was any chance my suspicions were true, I needed to be prepared. When Tom answered the phone, I tried to keep my voice steady. "Hey, it's Nathan. I need your help." There was a pause before he replied. "Nathan? Wow, it's been a long time. What's going on?" "I've got a situation," I said. "It's personal. I need to set up some cameras. I've got a few suspicions about my girlfriend, and I want to see if I'm just paranoid or if there's something I need to be concerned about." Tom was quiet for a moment. "I can help you with that, but it's a big step, man. You sure about this?" I didn't even hesitate. "Yeah, I'm sure." We arranged to meet that evening at my place. As I waited for him, I could feel the tension building. Part of me wanted to back out, but I couldn't. The doubt had already taken root too deep inside me. Tom arrived with a small bag, pulling out a few devices I didn't fully understand. "It's simple," he said, setting up 2 small cameras that would be discreetly placed in the living room and the hallway leading to the bedroom. They'll record when there's motion. You can check them from your phone, live, or after the fact. I watched him work, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and dread. The idea of watching Sarah, seeing her every move, filled me with discomfort. But I had to know. I couldn't let this go on any longer. When he was finished, I stood by the door as he packed up his things. "You've got this," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Let me know if you need anything else." I nodded, but the weight of what I was about to do settled in. As Tom left, I stood still, staring at the spot where the camera had been placed. knowing it would capture every moment of her life that I had started to doubt. For the next few days, I watched. At first, it felt like a relief, like I was finally doing something, like I was taking control of the situation. I scrolled through the footage at night, watching for any sign of what I suspected. But for the first couple of days, everything seemed normal, too normal. She'd go to work, she'd come home, she'd make dinner. There were no strange interactions, no suspicious behavior. Each night I'd tell myself, maybe I'm just being paranoid. But then there were small moments that didn't sit right with me. One evening, she came home from work later than usual. The footage showed her walking in, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. She looked tired, almost on edge, as if she was carrying a secret. She didn't greet me like she usually did. She just dropped her bag and immediately went to her phone, not even looking up. Later that evening, she went into the bathroom for longer than normal, and when she came out, her hair was a little messier than it had been before, her lipstick just slightly smudged. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe she just had a rough day. But then, the next morning, she was getting ready to leave, and she kissed me on the cheek, a quick, almost absent kiss, and went on her way. She hadn't done that in months. It felt mechanical, almost like a gesture she thought she should make, but didn't mean. I had to pause the footage and take a breath. I was on the edge of something I didn't want to confront. The longer I watched, the more I felt the walls closing in on me. She wasn't just changing, she was hiding something. And the more I watched, the more my worst fears began to feel like reality. I started to get angry, not just with her, but with myself. Why hadn't I noticed this sooner? How had I let it go on this long without saying anything? I wanted to confront her. I wanted to throw it all in her face and demand answers. But part of me, some small, rational part, knew that I needed more. I needed evidence. I couldn't go to her without it, not if I wanted to get the truth. Each day felt like an eternity, the tension building as I tracked her movements. The worst part? She was slipping away from me, and I didn't even know how it happened. But there was one thing I was sure of. I was going to find out exactly what was going on, and when I did, nothing was going to be the same. The truth was closing in, and I couldn't look away. The weeks leading up to that moment felt like a slow descent into an inevitable truth. Each day I stared at the footage, waiting for a moment, a sign, something to prove what I already feared. My hands trembled as I sat in front of the screen, scrolling through the videos. I had seen Sarah's routines, her movements, her conversations, but there was nothing damning. Everything seemed normal, too normal. But that night, as I reviewed the latest footage, something changed. The camera in the living room captured Sarah walking through the front door, just like she had hundreds of times before. But this time, something was different. She was wearing that same tight, form-fitting dress I had noticed her wearing more often lately, the one that showed off her curves. She didn't greet me right away like usual. Instead, she immediately reached for her phone, typing something with a sense of urgency. I couldn't see the screen, but the way her eyes were darting around made me feel like she was hiding something. Then, the doorbell rang. Sarah froze for a split second, her eyes darting to the door. She quickly smoothed her dress, took a deep breath, and opened it. My heart skipped when I saw the man standing at the door, a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, well-dressed, with dark hair and a confident air about him. I watched them exchange a few words before he stepped inside. As they moved to the living room, Sarah's body language was different. She was more relaxed, more open. The tension that usually hung in the air when she was around me was absent. She laughed at something he said, and it was that laugh, that easy, carefree laugh, that hit me like a punch to the gut. The same laugh I hadn't heard from her in weeks, the one she used to give only to me. I watched in disbelief as they sat down on the couch. He leaned in slightly, his hand brushing against hers. It wasn't a casual touch. It wasn't the kind of touch you'd give a friend or a coworker. It was intimate, and for the first time, I saw Sarah's eyes soften in a way I had never seen before. There was something there, something more than just a casual meeting, something that spoke volumes without either of them saying a word. I felt my stomach turn. This wasn't just a friendly hangout. This was something else. They sat there for a while, talking quietly, but I could tell from their body language, the closeness, that this was more than just a friendship. The way her hand lingered in his for a moment too long, the way they leaned in close, her face lighting up with a smile I hadn't seen in so long. They were connecting, and I wasn't part of it. I felt like I was watching a scene from a nightmare. I had seen the evidence right in front of my eyes. There was no denying it anymore. Sarah wasn't just hiding something, she was living a lie. I couldn't take it anymore. I shut the footage off, my chest tightening. The lump in my throat felt suffocating. I had watched her unravel before my eyes, and now there was no going back. But something inside me clicked. I couldn't confront her just yet. Not until I had everything. I needed to be sure, absolutely sure, that I wasn't misinterpreting this. I knew what I saw, but I also knew I had to have every detail, every moment, to make sure she couldn't lie her way out of it. I began to catalog everything. The videos, the timestamps, the way she behaved. Each second played out like a piece of evidence I could use to confront her. I knew what I had to do, but even as I methodically gathered the proof, a cold rage began to build inside me. The betrayal hurt, but it wasn't just the affair. It was the realization that I had been living in the dark for so long, that I had trusted her with everything, and she had thrown it all away without a second thought. I didn't know what was more painful, the fact that she was seeing someone else, or the fact that she had lied to me for so long, playing me like a fool. But one thing was clear now. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had the proof, and soon she was going to face the consequences of her actions. I stood up, walking over to the window, staring out into the night. The silence in the house felt deafening. Everything had changed, and now, so would I. It wasn't just about confronting her anymore. It was about taking control, about reclaiming the life I had built, and not letting her, or anyone, take that away from me. The day had arrived. The plan was set in motion. I had everything in front of me, screens full of footage, timestamps, messages, evidence I'd gathered meticulously over the past few weeks. I had watched Sarah, observed her every move, and what I had uncovered could no longer be ignored. The truth was staring me in the face, and I couldn't turn back. The moment felt surreal. I had imagined this confrontation 100 times, but now, as I set everything up in our living room, the weight of the situation hit me. I wasn't just confronting Sarah, I was exposing her, showing her the consequences of the lies she had been feeding me. I knew the emotional fallout would be brutal. I had planned everything for maximum impact, and there was no turning back now. I called her parents knowing they had to be here for this moment. They had to witness the woman they had raised fall apart, face the truth they had been too blind to see. They were complicit in their own way, turning a blind eye to the cracks in our relationship for so long. This wasn't just about me, it was about showing them who she had really become. When they arrived, Sarah was already in the living room, looking confused at the unexpected gathering. Her parents, standing stiffly at the door, exchanged uncertain glances. But they didn't speak. Sarah turned to me, her eyes scanning the room, and for a brief moment I saw the same defensiveness in her eyes that I had been noticing lately. "What's going on, Nathan?" she asked, her voice shaking just a little. "Why did you ask Mom and Dad to come over? This isn't—" I cut her off. "Sit down, Sarah. We need to talk." My voice was steady, almost calm. Inside, I was a storm, but I couldn't let her see it. She hesitated but sat down, her eyes shifting nervously from me to her parents. "What is this? What's happening?" I walked over to the coffee table, placing a stack of documents in front of her. "This," I said coldly, "is what's happening. I've had enough, Sarah." She glanced at the documents and then back at me, a mix of confusion and irritation on her face. "What's all this, Nathan? What is this? Some sort of joke?" I didn't smile. I didn't react. I opened my phone and pulled up the footage. The footage I had watched a dozen times. The footage that confirmed everything I had feared. I hit play, and the video of her greeting Ben at the door started to fill the room. Her parents watched in surprise as their daughter interacted with the man. She laughed, leaned in slightly, and there was a warmth between them that felt deeper than casual friendship. Sarah's face turned pale as she watched herself on screen. She reached for her phone, probably thinking she could stop me somehow, but I had already disabled it. She couldn't escape. Sarah," I said, my voice sharper this time. "I've been watching you, tracking your lies, your movements. I know about Ben. I know you've been seeing him. I know everything." Her breath hitched as the truth settled in. She looked up at her parents, eyes wide, but there was no more deflection, no more pretending. It was too late. The evidence was undeniable. "No," she whispered, her voice cracking. "No, this isn't what it looks like." Her father spoke up, voice thick with disbelief. "Sarah, what's going on? What is this?" I could hear the panic in his voice, but there was something else too, something that made me realize how deeply she had deceived them as well. They had no idea. They hadn't seen the version of their daughter that I had come to know, the one who had been hiding secrets, betraying me for months. Sarah tried to speak, but her words fell apart. She couldn't explain this away, not with the evidence in front of her. She looked at her parents, her face crumpling. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, her voice small, desperate. "I never meant to hurt you, Nathan. Please, just don't do this." Her parents were silent, but I could see the shock in their eyes. Her mother couldn't look at her. Her father was speechless. They were both watching a woman they didn't know, a woman who had woven a web of lies around them all, and now it was unraveling in front of their eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you either," I said, my voice steady but cold. "But you did this. You took everything I gave you and lied to my face. I trusted you, Sarah. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me?" Sarah's eyes welled up with tears, and for a moment, I thought she might actually apologize. But the apology never came. She just sat there, helpless. The woman who had once been so confident, so sure of herself, was now broken, unable to fix what she had destroyed. I turned to her parents. "I don't want her to have anything," I said, voice low and unwavering. "She doesn't get to take anything from me, not anymore." Her mother opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "Number? She's lost everything. Her lies, her betrayal. This is the price she has to pay." There was a long, tense silence before I spoke again. "It's over, Sarah. You're not part of my life anymore. I don't care what your excuses are. It's over." Her parents stood there, unsure of how to respond. But I knew. They had to see the truth now. They had to understand that the person they had loved, the person they thought they knew, was someone completely different from the one I had experienced. The weight of what I had done settled in my chest, but I didn't flinch. I was done being the victim. I was done waiting for an apology that would never come. And as I walked away, I knew one thing for sure. My life was mine again, and there was no going back. The house was eerily quiet as I watched Sarah's parents help her pack up her things. The weight of it all was sinking in, but there was no room for regret, no space for second thoughts. This was the end, and I had no intention of looking back. As I stood in the doorway, watching her shrink away, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of detachment. The woman I had loved for years, the woman I thought I knew, was nothing more than a stranger now. Her empty boxes, filled with the remnants of our life together, felt like nothing but clutter to me now. It wasn't just her things being removed from the house. It felt like the years I'd spent believing in her, trusting her, were being ripped away as well. Her mother tried to comfort her, but Sarah didn't respond. She just stood there, lost, not even bothering to wipe the tears off her face. It was hard to feel sorry for her, especially after everything she had put me through. "You're making a mistake," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper, as she turned toward me. Her face was red and streaked with tears. "You don't have to do this. We can fix things." I looked at her, shaking my head slowly. "No, Sarah, we can't fix this. You've already destroyed it. You've destroyed us." She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "You don't get to apologize. You don't get to come in here, cry, and think that somehow everything's going to be okay. Not after everything I've seen. Not after everything you've done." Her parents were silent, but their presence was felt. They knew it too. They were watching the woman they had raised unravel before their eyes, and there was nothing they could do to fix it. I had taken control of this situation. No more enabling, no more pretending it wasn't happening. "I loved you," I said, my voice low but steady. "I gave you everything, and you couldn't even have the decency to be honest with me." I saw the guilt flash across her face, but it didn't matter. The damage had been done. This was the price she had to pay for betraying me. As I watched Sarah struggle to hold herself together, something in me shifted. The anger that had been boiling inside me was starting to settle, replaced by a calm resolve. This was the final step. She had pushed me so far, and now it was over. I didn't want her apologies. I didn't want her to beg for my forgiveness. I wanted her out. I wanted my life back. "Take your things and leave," I said flatly, turning my back to her as I walked toward the door. "It's over." I didn't look back when I heard her sobbing, and I didn't feel guilty. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt in control of my own life again. She had broken us, but now I was the one who was done, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Her parents didn't say anything. They watched, the shock in their eyes palpable, but they didn't stop her. I knew they were disappointed in her, but they knew this was her mess to clean up, not mine. They helped her gather the last of her things, and the finality of it all hit me. The house that had once felt like home was now an empty shell, no longer filled with love or comfort, but with the remnants of a betrayal too deep to ignore. As they left, Sarah turned to me one last time, eyes wide, lips trembling. "Nathan, please. I'm sorry. I never wanted it to end like this." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She already knew. She had made her choice, and now, so had I. Her parents helped her out to the car, and I stood by the door, watching her go. As the car pulled away from the driveway, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. But more than anything, I felt free. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for so long was finally gone. The lies, the manipulation, the endless doubts, they were all behind me now. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. The house was silent, but for the first time in what felt like forever, that silence was comforting. It wasn't loneliness, it was peace. My thoughts drifted to the future, to the life I had ahead of me, one that was no longer defined by betrayal or deceit. I wasn't sure where I was headed, but I knew I was done with the past. The future was mine to create, free from the chains of lies and emotional manipulation. As I moved to the couch and sat down, I grabbed my phone and began drafting a message to my attorney. The divorce process was about to begin, and I was ready. This was the final step toward reclaiming my life. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but I had made it through the hardest part. I wasn't going to let her betrayal hold me back anymore. The past was behind me, and the future was wide open. I was free, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. The house was finally empty. The silence that had once felt heavy and suffocating now felt peaceful. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. I stood in the living room, looking around at the space that had once been filled with the promise of love and shared dreams, now stripped of everything that had made it feel like home. The furniture was gone, her things were packed, and the remnants of our life together were scattered in boxes at the door. It was over. I took a deep breath, the weight of the past few months, of the betrayal, the lies, the confrontation, finally beginning to lift from my chest. I no longer had to carry the burden of suspicion or confusion. The truth had been exposed, and now I was free to move forward. I walked over to the table where the paperwork was laid out. The papers from my attorney. The divorce proceedings had officially begun. It wasn't easy to take that first step, to finalize the end of a relationship I had once believed in with all my heart. But now, it felt like the right thing to do. The process was a formality, the final piece of the puzzle that would separate me from the person who had broken everything we'd built. I picked up the phone and dialed my attorney's number, my fingers steady despite the heaviness in my chest. The conversation was short, professional. I confirmed the next steps, set a date for the final paperwork, and even started planning the next phase of my life, separating our assets, making sure everything was tied up. There was no room for lingering doubt anymore. This was the path I had to take. When I hung up, I sat there for a moment, staring at the blank walls around me. I couldn't stop my mind from wandering back to Sarah, to the woman I had trusted. I thought of her soft laughter, her touch, the moments that had once felt like they would last forever, but now they felt like echoes, faint, distant memories that no longer held any weight in my life. I hadn't realized until this moment just how much emotional space she had taken up. The lies, the questioning, the constant uncertainty. It had consumed me. But now, there was a calmness in the stillness of the house. It wasn't peace yet, but it was the beginning of it. I stood up, walking over to the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the neighborhood. The light was soft, warm. It felt like the beginning of something new, something different. The world was still moving, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could move with it, free from the weight of the past. I had been defined by my relationship with Sarah for so long, but I wasn't anymore. I was defining myself now, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't the man I had been in that marriage, the man who had been hurt, betrayed, confused. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had taken back control. I reached for the phone again, this time dialing the number of a close friend. We hadn't spoken much recently, but I needed to hear another voice. I needed to know I wasn't alone in this. "Hey man," I said when he picked up, my voice more confident than I had expected it to be. "It's been a while. You free to grab a drink tonight?" The conversation that followed wasn't long, but it felt like the first step in rebuilding. I was finally allowing myself to reconnect, to reach out, to rebuild a life outside the one I had lost. And as I hung up, I realized that, for the first time in a long while, I wasn't worried about what would happen next. I was focused on what I could control, on the future that was finally open to me. I looked at the empty space around me, feeling the remnants of the past slip away. It wasn't easy. There were still moments when the weight of what I had gone through would hit me, when the pain of the betrayal would come rushing back. But I was no longer stuck in it. I was moving forward piece by piece toward a life that was mine again. I would take the steps I needed to heal, to rebuild, and to reclaim the life that had been taken from me. The future was wide open now, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I could see it clearly. And as I stood there, looking out at the world that was waiting for me, I knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning of something new.